So like, although my practice is not only photography, it always comes with some kind of like photographic reference, and it can be like my photos or like up-repeated photos or like just inspired by other photos. And I've been working in photography for a long time, and I was working on different projects, and the project kind of like changes its own aesthetic depending on what I'm talking about. So I don't know if you got the chance to look at my website, but also in my archive there are projects that look a little different than my newer work. It's in a way, the work is coherent because it's always about the same subject matter. I'm interested in displacement and identity as a broader kind of a subject matter. In the last few years, I've been focusing on the power of media and consumer culture on identity, especially on my own identity. And I'm going back to some of kind of like childhood memories, both in photography and in video, and I'm putting together with humor and some sarcasm, creating kind of like still life, kind of like more abstract pictures and abstract videos, and also like videos where I perform to the camera and I perform kind of fictional characters. And especially in the video work lately, I've been focusing on like kind of like my identity as an Italian in the US more than 10 years ago. And so like playing with the stereotypes and all ideas that I never liked when I was an Italian, but in a way that like kind of when I was in Italy, but like in a way kind of focusing on all the stereotypes and stereotypical idea, kind of to play with it. And in photography, it's kind of the same. So I would say in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been focusing on exploring the visual vernacular, the way I like to call it. So especially focusing on social media and the internet. I noticed there's a very common and stereotypical way to use images and especially photography, which for me is the new way, it's the new communication. So because we all have a bigger access to cameras and very advanced phones that can take picture, we communicate through images, which is not negative necessarily a bad thing. It's for me, it's like very exciting and very frustrating at the same time. The fact that the possibility of having a stronger visual communication and broader tends to create only or almost like stereotypical communication, and that can lead to in a way to monoculture. And that's what all my work is about, like kind of exploring this stereotypes. In a way, I'm embracing some visual stereotypes and cliche and using them with humor and playing with that. I mean, I also put myself in kind of like in a very central position because I don't want to judge. I don't want to kind of like put myself outside of the conversation. The work is about my ambivalence towards this phenomenon. So like I'm highly attracted by glossy, for example, images, commercial images, but at the same time I'm also very critical. So in a way, it's kind of like exploring this ambiguity and this like fine line between what is a stereotypical image, what is a commercial image, what is a photo, fine art image, and it's kind of what interests me at the moment, to kind of like break these barriers and kind of explore the subtle differences. And sometimes there's even not a difference. It's just a question of context and not about content. So this is a broad presentation. In terms of bio, I mean, I'm Italian. I didn't study art. I have a background in psychology. although I've been doing art for a long time, first in music and then photography and video and visual art. I teach at SVA, and I'm a freelance photographer. So like in my life, I'm kind of split in between making work for hire and also being in my studio and making work that kind of questions the professional figure that kind of like makes my living in a way. And also, I'm interested in using commercial photography, but at the same time, I'm very frustrated by that. So that's why I always needed this kind of like my personal kind of like fine art output that it's been like kind of like playing with the same elements, but kind of subverting them in a way. When I work commercially, I try to avoid those conventions that are necessary. So that's why I'm not a very successful commercial photographer. But when I'm in the studio, in my own studio, I play with those conventions in a more playful way to kind of like criticize some of those dynamics. So that's a little bit of like context to kind of understand my work. And I'll just go ahead and show like a project, and then if you guys have questions, you can interrupt me at any time. I think it's better if it's a conversation instead of just like question at the end. I like question in between.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any question when you see it, just like ask. And if you, Claudia, have anything to add, or any of you guys, feel free to ask. Let me see if I can start video. Okay. Yes. So I have a virtual background here. Let me see. Video. Virtual background, none. Okay. So,
should I make, I don't know exactly if we do two screens, or you just logging out of your computer now?
Oh, wait a second. I can mute here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we have a little bit of feedback, but yes.
Yeah, I turned off my computer. So now I can show you some of the recent work, which is it's called The Big Flat Now, and it's kind of hard to. So these are prints on metallic paper that I've always found very, very cheesy and one of those things that you never want to use, like those like special paper and stuff like that. But I think for this this project was actually perfect. And let me see if we can see. So, the metallic paper allows you to, have a different perception and some reflection and having this kind of like monitor-like kind of effect. The project is called The Big Flat Now. It's kind of like a humorous way to. Can you guys hear me or not? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Because I don't see. All right.
I think everybody muted themselves to not interfere.
No, I know. But do you also see the picture? Because right now I'm seeing like Studio One.
Oh, that's me. I'm Studio.
Okay. But usually when someone speaks, you should see the image. I don't know. You should see my picture.
We see you. I see you.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so it must be just me. So the project, like I said, kind of explores and creates kind of like this flat surfaces by layering different images. Some of these images are like appropriated images that I rephotograph. Some might be like commercial signage or generic illustration that I can find
on the street, or like my own photographs, or like photos or scans, or like different iPhone pictures, or like different kind of images that at some point kind of like sit on my desktop in a folder called new stuff, or like stuff, or something like that. And then at some point I started to layer all these images one on top of each other, creating like kind of like fake shadows in Photoshop, because I wanted to give an idea of this layering. But at the end of the day, the layering is just flat. So all these images are just flat, and I'm using this kind of metallic paper and this small format. My prints are usually bigger. Small format, kind of like referencing kind of like not computer monitor, but like iPhone monitors. That's why they're vertical, but they are bigger. I mean, it doesn't want to be literal, but it's just a little bit of that. Usually the work that I make is like 40 by 50 or 30 by 40 or something like that. And this is an older project. It's called Digital Deli, where all this conversation started, and it's mounted to Plexi, and it has a like a colored Plexi on the back. And I mean, the lighting is bad here, but you should be able to see kind of like an orange pink halo around the picture. So in a way, I'm also interested in like making the photo an object in space, and so the big flat now also becomes kind of a sculptural object, which is this. Starting from mounting Plexi, I decided to mount on a thicker Plexi. So I have like two pictures mounted back to back. Let me see if the light is better here. Where is it? Here. So this is one side, this is one of the pictures. This is the other side. This very thick Plexi. And this is a model of something bigger that at some point I hope I'll be able to make. But again, like the idea of the big flat now is having pictures kind of like scattered in space as commodities, and also printed on different materials. So I have like the metallic paper and the Plexi here, and becomes a sculptural object. I'm also testing with fabric, and this is kind of a flag fabric, like a polyester, super shiny polyester. And in an exhibition setting, the flag would be probably like I don't know, 4 by 8 feet, 5 by 8 feet. Again, two images back to back, hanging from the ceiling. Right now, I'm working on a solo show for Flightweight Project, which is an interesting project run by two artists, and it's basically a show in a miniature gallery. So the scale is 1 inch equals 1 foot. So it's the gallery is kind of like a museum, big gallery, and they invite artists to have to think about a show they would like to realize and kind of test it in a small space. And this is why you have this small prints here. This is actually the real size of the flag in the installation. This is a carpet. This is a glitch from an image that I screenshotted from one of, opening one of my images or one of my videos. The file was corrupt, and I had this amazing color, and I just took a screenshot, and I've been using this image in different work. And so this is going to be the fabric. This is printed on kind of terry cloth. It's going to be the carpet of the gallery. This is going to be the flag, and this is going to be the big sculpture, kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey kind of monolith with an image. So the human figure is like this tall, and this is a big sculpture. So images become object and they're in space, but they're object, but they always reference an image. So I always want to see that it's an image, even if the image itself is multi-layered. And here I'm applying holes and you know, kind of like giving an idea of depth, but also acknowledging the viewer that it's just an artifice. Yeah, that's what the project is about. Project comes from another project that is called Digital Daily, and again, it's kind of an exploration of. It's the beginning of my exploration on the visual vernacular and this stereotypical communication. And Digital Daily is an installation, is a video, is a performance, is a book, and what else? It's a poster. I have some of the material. Those two pictures there are from Digital Daily, constructed in the studio, kind of photographing and rephotographing pictures. The project then becomes this like zine pamphlet. There are some of the pictures, and the important thing is like every new iteration, there's like something new, either a different edit or different scale, or you know, adding new images or like removing images. And so this was the idea of like, this pamphlet was presented at the New York Art Book Fair. So we decided with this publisher, which is called, I forgot, he's a friend, Silent Face, is related to Joe Dessler Costa is related to ICP. That's in some way. I don't know if you guys know him, but anyway. So we decided to do this poster, and again, so playing with this kind of like generic idea, like very pop culture kind of like ephemera. So okay, I made a poster, which is it's kind of like a parody of a poster, but you can use it as a poster as well. So why not? So again, like this ambiguity and ambivalence between like the seductive power of pop culture, which is all about that. And this is kind of my mood board, kind of like ongoing.
Marco, can I ask some questions? So just because you like one, it's derivative, like Digital Daily came first, and now it's a new project sort of emerges from it. And my question is, in Digital Daily, I can clearly see what you spoke about earlier in terms of like the stereotypes with regard to your heritage or certain things from, you know, childhood memory and your past, or so in this new project, it's more of you know, it feels to be more about photography itself, and maybe the accumulation of photographs in, you know, on our cell phones, on our computers. You know, we're taking all these pictures, but yet we never use them, and yet they're there. And when we look at all of them together, mashed together, all these like little things that we have no meaning whatsoever, or they're sort of like extracted from their original context, and now they're just images, and they become, you know, a sculptural piece, but yet we are surrounded by them. It's sort of like the personal narrative that was in Digital Daily is, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's my question. Is that still there?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. Definitely, with Big Fleck now, the work becomes more abstract and less personal on a first level. I mean, some people thought that Digital Daily was already very detached and not very personal. Although there's always, I mean, for me, there's always like a personal starting point. It's not just like an aesthetic exploration. There's always something. I mean, the way why I choose like a generic image is because, of course, I react to that. Sometimes it's unconscious. Sometimes it's like, why do I like this picture? Or like, why, you know, why we are all attracted by this kind of pictures, and why do I pick this picture? So to a certain extent, of course, Bigfoot now is more, I don't want to say more abstract, it's probably more broad and more general, and speaks more about the identity of photography itself. Kind of goes in that territory more into a more personal, although, you know, Digital Daily was the beginning of that conversation. I'm just like, in a way, exploring where these images are you know, pushing me, and they are, where they're going. So there's, in Digital Day, there's the beginning of this layering, especially in the book, and I can show you a little bit of the book. But I think Bigfoot now becomes like about the framework. I'm kind of like interested in how, although we are obsessed by creating content every day, or you know, this idea of like having to produce content and share this content, I strongly believe that the content can be anything. What is important nowadays is the framework, is the structure, and the structure nowadays is like how the way photography circulates, which is mostly on social media, and so sometimes the pictures were just the images that I'm attracted by, and they are sometimes are generic images that I want to use, trying to understand why they're so strong, because they are colorful, because they have like simple images, because they're, you know, fruit and like tropical things, and whatever kind of archetypes in a way. But it can be anything, really. Sometimes I use the same images in a different composition, and the way the colors combine, or the layers combine, gives a different effect. So in a way, working on this project, I'm interested in how a photograph can become kind of a texture, kind of like the kind of ambient noise, and still be perceived as an image, as a photographic image. That's why I'm also starting to print on fabric, because like I'm interested in how this layering of images can become a texture, in a way to kind of subvert the idea of classic photography, where there's a subject in the middle. And again, nothing wrong with that. I'm very attracted by classic straight photography, but in a way, I think there's some tendency to also go in a different direction, and I'm exploring that tendency where photography kind of like deconstructs itself and becomes texture, becomes just a pattern. And by this, of course, I want to be provocative. You know, I want to start a conversation, and you know, like it's like I said, like ambiguity and provocation, and these are all things that right now I'm interested in, and the work wants to kind of start a conversation, and definitely it's about photography. But again, like in a broader conversation, is about like kind of like cultural displacement, and I think my identity can be seen very far and very unconsciously in a certain way, with kind of cultural displacement. I'm using a lot of elements that are like very colorful, bold, very American in a way, like kind of like a visual, kind of a visual, I don't want to repeat, but like kind of the daily vernacular, the you know, everyday communication, visual communication vernacular, like, you know, bold colors, or like hot dog stands, and you know, like decocks on a car. This is a fake kind of like Roman, Greco-Roman statue outside of an Italian-American restaurant in City Island in New York, and it's painted pink. So like, you know, like it's a pink Venus, which is kind of interesting. So like there's definitely some like kind of pop culture going on. But then again, like layering and juxtaposing and deconstructing, that's the single image kind of loses the real meaning. So it's more about the whole thing, and again, the framework. So I don't know how much time we have, if we have time to show a book, or if you guys want to have questions.
I wanted to open it up. My other question was with regard to texture. I wanted to say also that the previous project, Digital Delhi, had much more space, or negative space, and this one just feels like, woof, totally packed and layered, and there is something behind it, and if I even move. But what is interesting to me, that you stick so much to the rectangular format, and whether it's the plexi or, you know, the carpet, or the image that we see on the print, which I think you broke in Digital Delhi, and even in the book format, there was a little more of like, almost like one image could blend into the next. And here it feels like every image is a rectangular entity.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, I think you kind of like give yourself some rules to play with. I thought that the work was about like this kind of like overwhelming kind of visual landscape that I'm observing. So in a way, I wanted to give like a measure to kind of contain that, and because the work, it's so. I mean, there's so much stuff going on in each of these frames. So in a way, kind of like creating something more.
And there's also something like, if I can say that, like pop-up windows like that just accumulate on top of. So there's depth in that regards to like this overlayering or things peeking through. But it's interesting that you preserve this like rectangular frame.
Yeah.
It's like a reference to the screen or not.
There is a reference to the screen for sure. Yeah.
You know.
There is a reference to the screen. That's for sure. I've as for now, I haven't explored something that is totally different from the photographic rectangular frame, either, you know, portrait or landscape orientation. I never done like, you know, circles or like different shapes or whatever. It is something going into a more kind of like sculptural direction. The work might go like the different layers, instead of being on the same plane, can become like actual different layers in a space. I think you were mentioning this book, which was Digital Delhi, and I don't know if you can see it. So the book was the first iteration of the book was kind of like playing with all these layers and making a book that was kind of like expanding the idea of the double spread as the basic narrative unit in a book. And so step by step, you go to a situation where you have like different fragments of images that can communicate each other, and kind of expanding the double spread. So in a way, this is the first exploration, and this is, again, this work is this is the first iteration of the project. I think it's like 2016, and it's very early. There's a border. There's still like a more traditional way to present the photos, although I wanted to kind of break this pattern. There's this is even more personal. There's like some portrait, like my wife and stuff like that. And then in a newer version, I made the book, the prints are printed full bleed, and because there's much more images here, I decided to, I couldn't bind it with this coil, with the spiral binding, which I think it's important because it looks like kind of a commercial cheap catalog. But because it was too thick, and the pages and the registration of the pages was very tricky, and no one wanted to do it, and I don't own a machine by myself, so I rephotographed the book. So you see a little bit of shadows where an image goes on top of the other one, but then it's even more confusing. So this is the book. And so each page is a photograph of the previous page with a little bit of, I don't know if it's clear, but this is the back of this image. And then becomes kind of a gimmick that at first you don't understand what is going on, but then you realize, okay, this is the back of this image, and this is the back, this is the front. You see, this image is covering this one, and then Cookie Monster is here, and then this is the back of Cookie Monster. You see that now this image is covering this one. So it's just
like a frame-by-frame animation in a book of flipping through.
So basically, I photograph each page by moving the page, and then I reprinted in real size the pages. And now, because it's a different thing, I was able to bind it. So in a way, I'm still debating this. I'm debating if self-publishing this project, and I don't know which version, this one or this one, or probably both versions. Maybe this is a limited edition and this is kind of like kind of mass-produced version. But I like that at every step, this project kind of pushes me to kind of like exploring a new dimension of like how these images can be perceived together. And this, I don't know, this layering of images. And all these two projects start from sviaggioni, which is a made-up word in Italian that means kind of like big mental trips. And this was like 2015. You see, all the images are on the same plane. They are not overlapping. It's kind of like this comes first. Then we have the picture overlaps. The pictures overlap a little bit here. And then they become flat here, layered but flat. And then here they become, you know, even something else. So these are
helpful to understand your process for us.
So good. Basically, this is kind of like, again, this were like the first time at the time I was working like 4x5 film camera, very slow, and I started. This is when I got my first iPhone, and I noticed that the quality was good, and I started taking this kind of like visual notes, I guess, like we all do this, and then realized that at the same time I started posting on Instagram. Actually, it was Tumblr at the same time, and then Instagram. And I had this template that would change the slightly the proportion of the pictures and put them in the page and randomly reorganizing them. So I noticed that like some of the picture would group together, and I basically printed this book kind of like referencing the Tumblr, basically the template of Tumblr. So I recreated all this double spreads by organizing all the images. So at the end, it looks like what in the commercial world is called mood board, which is like the inspiration for a work. But this is a mood board basically of like pictures that I was taking around me. Some of these are just like pictures of pictures, or you know, this is a picture of like a Dorito illustration on a Dorito van or something like that, 4x4 Jeep or something like that. So pictures of picture become my mood board, and this is like I see this as the mood board for Digital Deli, and then Digital Deli becomes more abstract and becomes the big flat now. So I don't know if it's clear. It's a little like cerebral, I know, but this is basically kind of a presentation of like how I'm literally playing with images and how I'm working with this kind of like body of work, which is it's always I think it's always the same kind of body work. It's just like different iterations. I mean, at some point you kind of want to start with a new project, and you choose a new title, but it's all, you know, like I see in an installation one of the prints from Digital Deli being next to flag of from Big Fat Now and a video. I mean, we don't have time, or it's kind of like tricky to go through the video projects, but the video kind of plays with the same ideas. There's sometimes I create like backgrounds with animations with like layers and layers of images. And the personal part that Claudia, you were mentioning before, really comes a little more in the video, where I'm able to perform different characters that are kind of alter ego characters, and yeah, and so I can play with those idea in the context of these images. Recently I did a performance where I performed Dante's Inferno in a definitely more modern and funky way, and but yeah, that's playing with like my background and you know, with the study of the classics and pop art. This is and popular culture more than pop art. So it's the two kind of like versions of this face of the same medal in a way, in my case.
I don't know if you like, just because you mentioned Dante's Inferno, but Rauschenberg also did a project with Dante's Inferno. Actually, a whole book. You may want to check this out. It's pretty.
Yeah, amazing. I want to check this out for sure. I wasn't aware. I mean, it's a very common. There's a long tradition. I didn't know about Rauschenberg. I want to do it.
It's pretty amazing, and also considering that you probably never read the book. It's pretty good. So yeah. I don't know if we're running a little bit out of time. We're out of time, but maybe someone in the class has a question for you. And I know that Rita had to leave. She had to go to another Zoom birthday party, and people.
I know.
They want to
Zoom live.
Yes. Are there any questions for Marco from the class? I can unmute you guys.
I do. I just wanted to say, Mark, how do you select your images, or what are you drawn to? More of the content or the visual quality, like when you first see an image?
In 1 second.
Now comes your DJ.
Okay. So it's. So 1 second. Okay, there's a little bit of feedback.
No, it's good.
Okay, I looked out. Yeah, I looked out from the other one. I mean, there's definitely at this level it becomes very kind of like, it needs to be aesthetically pleasing for me, and in a way, right now I'm going in the opposite direction of minimalism, so it's probably maximalism. A few projects from years before were like very minimalist and then very different. I guess I get bored easily also of you know, the stuff that I make, and I always want to do something new. So in this case, I'm just like you know, attracted by patterns and colors and bold colors. So the photographs that I make, or the photographs that I rephotograph, or like details of other photographs, sometimes it's like the composition, sometimes it's the color. Most of the time is because these images kind of like reflect a certain aesthetic, which is the aesthetic of, you know, the time that I grew up in, like the 80s and 90s. Some kind of like kitschy, super colorful aesthetics, or commercial aesthetic. I'm kind of attracted by that like kind of tongue-in-cheek, but also like a little cheesy way that different eras use to kind of sell a product in a way. And there's no selling in this project really. But it's all about that. So it's kind of like someone said like this images looks like you're trying to sell a burger, but where is the burger? Like you're creating all this expectation, and you're creating all this some images like they look like very juicy, but then where is the burger? There's no burger. It's all about the expectation. I think it's all about kind of like a build-up that never explodes, and also create frustration in a way. So this was, you know, someone during a studio visit said that, and I thought it was an interesting point. I'm not trying to create to sell a burger. There's no burger. If that's kind of like going outside of the metaphor in a way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think a couple of people had to leave.
No, I know, I see, but I know it would have taken longer, but you know.
No, I know it's like a really short studio visit.
If there's any other question or comments, otherwise, like we can close. It's I know that we are over a little over 20-30 minutes.
This was great, Marco. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Where's your studio? Your studio's since I've been to your studio last time.
Oh no, yeah, this is a proper studio. Yeah, it's not in my apartment. It's like the previous 8 years. No, it's in East Williamsburg. It's next to the ICP building, basically on Grand and Metropolitan.
It's great.
I'm sharing it with other two artists. But yeah, it's been really a good. I mean, right now it's a little messy because I'm working on some music projects, so I have all the music equipment here, and I have to finish some. The next project would be a record instead of a book or. I've been working on some music and I'm finishing some music tracks, and I always done the music for my videos. So I'm taking this like a little slower time in the quarantine to focus on the music that I always keep on the side because it takes so much time. And hopefully this will become something concrete and not just on my hard drive. So we'll see.
Sounds great. Do you know Barry Stone by any chance?
Barry Stone. It sounds familiar.
Yeah, he used to teach at ICP, and he started like before social media or pre-Instagram, I want to say. He started this like picture a day project, and he's also a musician. And he is teaching. He moved to Texas, and he's teaching at the University of Austin, and so he's. More and more combines like images of music or records and also making music with his images. So maybe you want to.
Yeah, no, I'll check it out. Yeah, I mean, I guess like for me, video was definitely like the kind of like meeting point of the two dimensions, where the visual part of my work and the musical, but then it allowed me to explore a relatively new dimension, which was like the performative side of my practice. So video, it kind of becomes, speaking of layers, even more multi-layered in terms of like the different kind of aspects that I can put in the work. I've always been frustrated between like the music part and the photo part. I never liked like the slideshow with the music or stuff like that. I always try to find a way to combine the two things. At some point I did like audio video visual installation with a friend of mine. It was making live music, and I was doing kind of VJing in a way, animating my photos. So it wasn't video, but it was photo. So in a way, it was a way to kind of break that, and it worked. It worked only in a kind of like art context. We also played some music festival, but the music audience was confused. They said like, "What is that? This is not DJing, but it's not even like a slideshow. What is that?" So like, it was a little. I think video, at least for me, it's a good platform to kind of combine this different dimension. But it's yeah, it's and I think like this project, this kind of conversation that I embraced in the last few years, it was also like a good platform for me to go back to music and kind of like insert music in the conversation. The music that I'm making, it's kind of like made in the same way. So sometimes I sample pop hits but then I deconstruct them, I change the speed, I just take some elements, so you don't recognize the song, but you have this kind of deja vu, which also you have in the images. So I'm interested in like how I can use elements, kind of cultural artifacts that people can, in a way, have a feeling of having seen before, but creating something new, and but also being aware that this comes from something else, that I'm questioning, that I'm referencing something, and you know, by criticizing something that it's like sometimes like is kitsch or is ridiculous or is funny, I actually end up liking what I'm doing. And so at the end of the day, I'm also reconsidering also the sources that I years ago I consider like cheesy, some Italian disco music, or like kind of TV jingles or stuff like that. So sometimes when I do when I DJ, or when I do like mixtapes of like music which is not mine, I deliberately use that music that I used to hate, because now I understand it. I was probably like, when I was younger, I was probably like too straight edge, hardcore punk, and too radical to kind of understand the power of that pop artifact. So now of course with humor, I always use humor to keep it real. You know what I mean? I don't want to, it's interesting. There's always this like in between. So like, it's funny, it's cheeky, but it's also kind of like hard work. So it's, there's a lot of archival work to find the right song, to find the right piece, to find the right image. It seems like it's easy work, but it's very hard work. So it's, I'm happy that it has different layers, so you can see like, oh, it's just like, you know, this is just like, some people say, oh, this is just commercial photography. Sure, I mean, if you see that as commercial photography, it's fine, but it's a little more layered. But yeah, I also like that there's different layers of interpretation. So it's like, okay, it's colorful, I like it. Or like, oh, this is very Instagrammable. So yeah, go ahead. But then there's a deeper research behind it, which really starts from that. Oh, it is Instagrammable. It starts from that quote and goes back. But yeah,
great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.